Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're tuning in to your weekly rendition of War Eagle Weekly. Today is a bit of a different episode. Cameron is out with a pretty nasty cold that's sweeping its way across these parts. We got a lot to talk about today. Obviously, the A Day game was last Saturday, and you either came away impressed or not convinced at all. I happen to be on the side of being convinced. We'll get into that in just a minute. Um, yeah, we're going to go a lot of over a lot of football and then touch on to basketball a little bit today. But obviously, we're going to start with the A Day game. Um, what we got out of it, I feel like I saw everything I needed to see from both offense, defense, and especially special teams as well. Um, I saw the receivers get open. They created space. They put their bodies on the line to catch the ball, be it from a well placed ball that only the receiver could get to, or maybe even an overthrown ball that the receiver had to work to get to. I think you all can think about what I'm talking about when it comes to the overthrown ball and putting your body on the line. Cam Coleman laying his body out to grab that long pass from Hank Brown and just made highlight reels all over the country when he did that. I really do feel like Cam Coleman came away from that game showing everybody that he is what we thought he is. He finished the day with 4 catches and 92 yards. I think that's huge. It's been a long time since Auburn's had a receiver they could be this excited about. And I feel like as Auburn fans, we need to really, really get excited now if we weren't already. Um, the other guy, Robert Lewis, the transfer from Georgia State, I believe, he also had 5 catches, 73 yards. He's going to be a huge veteran presence for those guys. Um, he's got a lot of reps under his belt. He really showed his ability to run routes and catch difficult balls. I really feel like those two guys, especially, really showed out and answered a lot of questions when it came to receivers. I feel like I saw a lot out of the quarterbacks whenever they were in. Like I said, you're either impressed or you're not moved at all. I happened to be impressed because I wanted to see the QBs to be able to make the decisions they needed to make quickly, and I wanted to see the receivers on whether or not they can create separation and go up and get the balls. And I think we saw both of those things happen during the A Day game. The defensive line, huge. They all but erased Auburn's rushing game. I think our leading rusher in terms of yardage was Damari Alston with 21 yards, and other than that, it was no more than 12 from any of the running backs. So the defensive line, I feel, even though it's kind of like pick and pull and just copy and paste, not really copy and paste, but just putting people in different positions to see what they can do and see what our depth looks like. I really feel like the defensive line really showed out and showed what they can do against the run game. They were able to create a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks. Even from the secondary, we had Jaron Thompson, the transfer from Texas, actually got a sack from the safety position. So I think that's going to be really huge. I think Charles Kelly and oh my gosh, his name escapes my mind right now. They really got these guys going. They got the linebackers looking really good. They have the DBs looking super good. I can't tell you how impressed I was with Kayan Lee. That guy, he just impressed me. He had one pass breakup, and every receiver he was covering, he was just glued to the hip, and just made it very difficult for those receivers. Even though the receivers are still able to get the job done, it did take the offense a little while to get going. We only scored one touchdown during the A-Day game, which is okay in my opinion. Hugh Freeze would change where the offense will line up throughout the entire practice. He never let them start from the same position and never too close to the end zone or the red zone to really make it tilted towards the offensive favor. But the quarterbacks and the offense did what they needed to do to get the special teams in position to put points on the board. Um, when it comes to the running game, I'm not necessarily too worried about what we saw. I feel like the A-Day game practice was more geared towards the passing game and the receivers and the quarterbacks to see what they would be able to do. We all know what our running game is capable of. So I'm not really concerned about the blocking schemes or the running backs' inability to get going and get yardage. Everyone got the touches they needed to get, and so if you're concerned about the running backs, I really wouldn't. We had a down year last year, but our running backs were still able to produce, even with Jarquez Hunter missing the first 3 games of the season. So we have a lot of depth at running back, and the future of Auburn's running game has never been in jeopardy, in my opinion. Um, when it comes to the offense in the red zone, there was a few questionable decisions on the offense in terms of the plays being called to get into the end zone. Um, I don't know what it was. I know Hugh Freeze was talking to the reporter during the game on the field, but even he was saying that the quarterbacks made wrong reads or threw bad balls, or the offense just wasn't blocking correctly, or what have you. Um, so I don't know if I'm too concerned about that, but it is a little alarming that we weren't able to get into the end zone more than one time in that game. But on the other hand, we got to see a lot from our freshman walk on, Towns Magoo. That guy, 7 for 7 field goals, when tipping it off with, or capping it off with, a 58-yard game-winning field goal. That's immense amount of pressure on a freshman, and he came in clutch and won it for the offense, 28-27. So I mean, I'm definitely not worried about our special teams. We all know what we have, and McPherson coming back, and now we know what we have backing him up to take the reins whenever McPherson graduates or enters the draft. Um, One guy I was really impressed with on the defense, kind of just jumping all over the place here because I got a lot of just running through my mind. Another guy I was really impressed with on defense was Robert Woodyard. The guy, he doesn't look like the same player he did last year. I mean, he uh, he was all over the field. He finished with 3 tackles and a tackle for loss. I mean, what more can you ask from a guy that was looking like he was on the outs? Because there's a lot more talented linebackers coming in to challenge him, and I really feel like he's stepped up. He lost a lot of weight. He's put on more muscle. He's trimmed down. He just looks like a football player that's ready to make a name for himself instead of a guy that's just going to take a spot on the bench. So I mean, hats off to Robert Woodyard. The guy just has overcome a lot of adversity coming in under Brian Harsin and changing head football coaches after 1 year. It's just been huge, in my opinion, for Robert Woodyard. Um, and again, I came away from the A-Day game being super impressed with what I saw. Like, I wasn't blown away. None of the numbers will blow you away, but it was encouraging, very much so. I did like a lot of the calls that I was seeing on the RPO. We saw the quarterbacks get out of the pocket and make yards and plays for themselves to keep the offense moving. Um, Although, no one was able to lay a finger on the quarterbacks. They just blow the whistle whenever anyone got close to them. So we weren't able to see that full potential, but we did see a lot of encouraging things, in my opinion, that should get a lot of people really excited. Um, Now, when it comes to the question, are we happy with the quarterback play from what we saw? We had 4 quarterbacks take snaps and throw the ball and even try to run. Um, the starter Peyton Thorne finished the game 9 for 13, 133 yards, a touchdown with 4 rushing attempts and 20 yards. I mean, for limited snaps, limited attempts, and having to share the ball with all the other guys, I feel like that's a good stat line. He had a lot of good guys to throw to. He had Camden Brown really step up. The guy finished with 3 receptions on 45 yards, and that's just a really good stat line to have. You always want to have a guy that's averaging more than 10 yards a reception. I mean, come on, what more can you ask for? That guy, I really did feel like he was on his way out because of all the super talented freshmen coming in, and Robert Lewis coming in from the transfer portal. But after what he said to the reporters, that his dad raised him better than that, to quit whenever there's adversity, and whether or not his job is secure or not, he really showed maturity and the ability to adapt. And so Camden Brown is definitely one of my winners from the A-Day game. Um, the other quarterbacks, I mean, nothing really stands out. Hank Brown, we saw what he could do against Maryland in limited time after taking over for Holding Garner, who took over for Peyton Thorne. Hank Brown finished on 5 of 12 for 102 yards. And I really feel like I think he's going to be solidified as QB2. Um, when it comes to Holden Geriner, I want nothing but success for the kid, but I think the writing's on the wall with him. I feel like he's out of options when it comes to Auburn. And I mean, unless I was watching Locked on Auburn with Zach Blackaby, and he brought up a good point. Unless he really loves Auburn and doesn't want to leave, I feel like if that's the case, then Hugh Freeze is just going to have to go up to him and tell him, hey, we got to make room on the roster. I think it's in your best interest to transfer and go find a better opportunity for yourself. I mean, I don't think it's going to be in a disrespectful way, but I do feel like that writing is definitely on the walls for Holden Geriner, which is sad to say. Because when you got a guy like Walker White coming in, only having 3 more passing attempts than Holden Geriner and passing for double the yards, it's hard to convince yourself or Holden Geriner that it makes sense for him to stay on the team. As a whole, the QBs went for 26 48 on 364 yards and only 1 touchdown. That lone touchdown came from Peyton Thorne on a deep pass to Cam Coleman that made an exceptional catch to backpedal into the end zone. Um, when it comes to Cam Coleman and the QBs, I don't remember who was throwing the ball to him. I want to say it was Peyton Thorne. It was an underthrown ball, but Cam Coleman went up and tried catching the ball behind the defensive back's back and almost pinned it against the defensive back, um, but ended up not making the play. And I also agree with Hugh Freeze. It probably should have been a pass interference, but I think there's only 2 of those calls made the whole game. So the refs were really letting the guys play. Um, so all in all, again, I just come away fairly impressed with the offense and the play calls made for the offense to get the ball moving. So I could sit here and talk all day about it, but I just got to move on. There was one thing that a lot of people are starting to talk about. I don't think there's any merit to it. A lot of people think there might be a kicker competition with Towns McGoo going 7 for 7 and capping it off with a 58-yard field goal to win the game. I don't think McPherson's job is in jeopardy whatsoever friggin' ever. The guy finished the season on 100% for field goals and extra points last year, so it's kind of hard to justify replacing that with a freshman. Speaking of Towns McGoo, the guy is a friggin' preferred walk on. He's not a scholarship player, and he had scholarship offers, no, most notably to Ole Miss, and he chose to come to Auburn as a preferred walk on. Um, so I think we're going to be okay at kicker. Um, when it comes to who impressed me the most out of the entire game, my brother feels that Cam Coleman should be listed as the most impressive, but come on, he's a 5-star guy. Well, I think he was top 3 receiver in the country, maybe number 2 when he came out of high school and signed with Auburn, and he just showed us exactly what we already knew. And there is someone that I do agree with Cameron on. It's Kayan Lee, the guy. I hate comparing him to this player because he's from Alabama, but I truly do believe Kayan Lee is the next Pat Sertan in the NCAA. The guy can play friggin' ball. He knows how to play defense. He knows how to cover receivers. He knows how to do everything when it comes to playing defensive back. And he impressed me so friggin' much. I couldn't help but find number 4 on the field when the game was going on, and it's hard to look away from him because he just made play after play. He only had 1 pass breakup, but if you go back and watch, it was a ball that was definitely going to be caught for a touchdown, and he lifted his offhand and batted the ball almost into the safety's arm for an interception. So I mean, I just I'm glowing about Kayan Lee. He's just so friggin' good. And another guy I was really impressed was Antonio Kite, the transfer from Alabama. Um, he finished the game with what was it, 2 tackles and 1 pass breakup. He had the same stat line as Kayan Lee. I don't think he got as much playing time as Kayan Lee, but when he was on the field, he was making play after play after play. Um, I think he's going to fit in really well on this team. I feel like it's going to be very hard for the coaches to figure out who's going to take the field more often between Keontae Scott, Kayan Lee, and Antonio Kite. Um, we all know what Keontae Scott can do. He's going to be locked up. He's going to be on the defensive starting lineup no matter what, be it inside in the nickel or outside covering either one or two receivers. The one or two receivers, not two at a time. That's ridiculous. But I think we're going to be set, especially since a safety won defensive player of the game. Jaron Thompson finished with 3 tackles and a sack in the red zone to stop the offense from scoring a touchdown. So again, I think a lot of answers were, or a lot of questions were answered for me during this game on whether or not the defensive backs could come in and produce after losing Nehemiah Pritchett, Jalen Simpson, and DJ James to the draft. And so I had a lot of confidence coming out of that game and what our season is going to look like on the defensive side. But one guy I feel like is overlooked, but not really overlooked, especially when it comes to player of the game and most important from that game. The offense would not have won this game without Towns friggin' Magoo, the 5-star Coles kicker out of high school that again chose to walk on at Auburn instead of accept a scholarship from Ole Miss. That was a big punch in the gut to what's his? Oh my gosh, so many names are escaping my head right now. Lane Kiffin. Oh my gosh, brain fart. He just punched Lane Kiffin in the gut. I know Lane Kiffin really wanted Towns Magoo, but Hugh Freeze got him, and he just looked absolutely amazing in this game. He showed so much composure. He showed strength in his leg. He showed accuracy in his kicks, and the dude's got veins filled with ice. He's got ice in his veins. Um, so, in my eyes, in my opinion, Towns Magoo definitely won Player of the Game. Um, you can have your own opinions. Let us know in the comments who you think should be Player of the Game, who should receive more recognition than they're actually getting. That's just where I stand and where we stand as War Eagle Weekly. Um, when it comes to who won A-Day game, I would say technically the defense really won A-Day because they just stymied the offense. There's nothing the offense could really do other than a few pop plays that got us yards and down the field. But a lot of the times we were stalling. Guys weren't making catches. I think there was only 3 credited dropped passes. So the passes were either overthrown, underthrown, thrown out of bounds, or 3 non-catches. But other than that, the defense really showed out. They showed their bend but don't break mentality. They showed their gumption when having their backs against the wall in the red zone, because it's not like the offense didn't get into the red zone. It's just the defense was that good in stopping the offense from gaining any real momentum. One thing I was really bummed about when it came to the offense was the lack of tight end involvement, especially regarding Rivaldo Fairweather, who had only 1 reception for -1 yard. Other than that, Rico Walker also had 1 reception for 23 yards, which was huge. He's the guy that transferred from Maryland. Um, one guy I can't get over this play is Brandon Frazier. He caught a pass from the quarterback. He was on the sidelines. He was getting knocked out after a 5 to 6 yard gain, but for whatever reason, it looked like, from my vantage point, it looked like he just put the ball on the ground on his own accord, not being knocked out or anything, because the ball just kind of sat on the field and slowly rolled out of bounds. And that's a mind-boggling thing to happen to me, especially when he wasn't getting slobber knockered or really touched all that often, because he didn't go down. He walked out of bounds after a defensive back. Well, it was a linebacker that laid hands on him, but that's just one of the mistakes that has to be cleaned up. You can't make that kind of play, especially against the teams like Alabama or Georgia or friggin' Oklahoma, for that matter, who comes into Jordan Hare this year. Because if you do that in a live game, that ball's going to be picked up and ran for a touchdown. Luckily, the defense didn't really notice it until it was half a yard out of bounds. But those are just some of the small mistakes I think are going to need to be cleaned up. I think Hugh Freeze and company are going to get those cleaned up. I really liked Hugh Freeze's presser after the game. He acknowledged that some of the plays that were called just weren't going to work against the defense. He acknowledged that some of the calls were just the wrong calls made, period. He acknowledged guys that did good. He acknowledged guys that could use a lot more work. But overall, he was pretty optimistic and really praised the guys that deserve the praise. And so I don't think anyone's sunshine pumping on the coaching staff. I don't think anyone thinks that they're a polished team. There's nothing to work on because every one of us know. Anyone who watched the game or even highlights knows that there's a lot of things to be cleaned up. Um, so again, I come away from the game feeling refreshed. I was really liking what I saw. Um, very encouraged for the 2024 season to come underway. Um, when it comes to cleaning things up, it brings me to the transfer portal. A lot of people want Auburn to target a quarterback in the transfer portal. I just don't think that's going to happen. Hugh Freeze has been very vocal about standing behind Peyton Thorne as QB1 and working with the guys we have now and the desire to bring guys in from high school, not from the college ranks through the portal. Unless it's some sort of world breaking quarterback that randomly enters the portal and really wants to come to Auburn, I really don't think anyone should get their hopes up about Auburn targeting a quarterback in the portal because we're going to work with what we got. And the QBs did nothing in this game to warrant anyone to be concerned or wanting a different quarterback to come into the board. Everyone has their reservations about Peyton Thorne. I have my reservations about Peyton Thorne, but I've also been very vocal about standing behind Peyton Thorne as QB1, standing behind Hank Brown as QB2, and standing behind Walker White even if things start to break down and just throwing him to the wolves like we did with Bo Nix. And that's a whole nother topic I'm not going to get into with Bo Nix, but don't look for Auburn to target a quarterback in the portal. I do think we could target a couple more pieces on the defensive line just for depth and size. I really did like what I saw from our defensive line, especially from Quintrell, Jamison, Travis. He had 3 tackles and 3 tackles for a loss. So I really don't think we should be too concerned about our defensive tackles. Maybe on defensive ends, they didn't really get a whole lot of pressure on the quarterback in this game, but they were able to make them uncomfortable, if you will. Um, I really liked what we saw from our freshmen on the defensive line, but you can never really have enough depth when it comes to the defensive line because those guys are taking a beating every single snap of the game. And if someone gets dinged up in the middle of the game for turf toe, even you're going to want a guy to come in and give them a spell for them to get their wind back and to get some energy and some rest. So I would probably look for Auburn to add at least one more player for depth on the defensive line. Um, when it comes to other positions, I don't think we're going to really target any running backs unless we have one or two guys enter the portal. I do think it is pretty feasible that to think that Brian Battie is going to enter the portal unless he wants to be strictly special teams as a return man. We didn't really get to see a whole lot of Brian Battie last year returning the ball. He did have a couple games where he made some plays returning the ball. Um, but when it comes to getting quality snaps in game, he's not really doesn't really have a set place on the depth chart because you got guys like Jarquez Hunter that came back, Damari Austin that came back, and Jeremiah Cobb, who looked actually pretty good in the game when it came to running the ball and making decisions. But I could see Auburn adding maybe another depth piece at running back to give all those guys breaks or to put them in different positions as a receiving back or a blocking back. Um, Another position I could see Auburn adding in the portal would be wide receiver because there are a few guys on the roster right now that could also enter the portal, like Jay Fair and Coy Moore, or even maybe Caleb Burton. I don't want Caleb Burton to leave, but with the emergence of Camden Brown and Robert Lewis coming in, and just making it look easy. I could see Burton trying to test the waters, if you will, when it comes to the portal. That's another position you can't have enough depth on, because again, it comes back to the defensive line argument that people are going to get hurt, people are going to get winded, they're going to need spells, they're going to need rest, and so I think we could see at least another wide receiver come in through the portal whenever the portal opens in the spring. Um, I can maybe see another guy being added in the portal on the offensive line, even though I know Hugh Freeze doesn't really want to rely on the portal when it comes to the offensive line. I know we relied on it a lot before the 2023 season. He added a lot of guys on the offensive line in the portal. They did really good. Gunnar Britton was very exceptional in his playing time at Auburn. And so, I mean, if we could get another guy like Gunnar Britton coming in, I could definitely see them being a take. So I mean, there's a lot of positions we can get into where we think they could just pick and pull players to just put in and out to make sure we're staying fresh, kind of like what Auburn basketball did with Bruce Pearl and his just genius tactic of rotating all of his players for playing time, so everyone stayed fresh and rested. So I mean, nothing's out of the window in my mind other than quarterback when it comes to the portal. Um, it does definitely does help with the portal and recruiting when we ditch friggin' Under Armour and sign a 10-year deal with Nike that starts in July of next year. So I mean that's just going to draw a lot of attention from a lot of players entering the portal and coming into college from high school. So I mean I feel like that's going to do nothing but good things for Auburn when it comes to adding players, especially on the football and basketball programs. So I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen, will happen, and should happen in this off season before the season starts. Um, it's just a lot of good things are happening at Auburn right now. I mean, when it comes to that Nike deal, I've been saying for years, it may not make an on paper difference when it comes to recruiting, but these players, these kids, they care about appearances, they care about their apparel, and Nike is just the creme de la creme, the top. They're Mount Everest when it comes to sports apparel. They have more options. They have better designs, and I feel like they're going to be able to add a lot more uniform alterations and combinations, and it's going to attract a lot of talent and a lot of guys and a lot of kids to come to Auburn and play for them, especially on the football team, in my opinion. Could you imagine Auburn walking out on the field with the navy blue helmets, orange face mask, and orange jerseys? I mean, come on. Who wouldn't want that? I want that. I know some people that don't, but I certainly do. And I think a lot of these high school kids and transfer kids are gonna want to be donning the orange and blue when it comes to that kind of stuff because Auburn does have one of the more classic and best looking uniforms in college football. And I just think it can only get better with this Nike deal. Um, Even on the friggin' basketball team. There's just I want more orange jerseys in the basketball on the basketball team. I love the orange jerseys, and just with us ditching Under Armour, it's just I can't stop gushing about it. It's huge in my opinion. Um, I know a lot of guys are like, "Oh, I already have so much Under Armour Auburn apparel. Who cares? Get more Nike stuff. Nike's better than Under Armour, anyways. Nike shoes suck. Not Nike shoes. Under Armour shoes suck. Nike shoes are the bomb, especially Nike Shocks. But it's gonna be it's a good deal, 10-year deal, and I can only imagine we're gonna extend after 2035. Switching to basketball, though, there were some terrible news that was expected. Don't want to see it because you want the kid to do nothing but good things, and you wanted him to be the player that we knew he could have been. Aiden Holloway announced that he has put his name into the transfer portal, is looking for a new home. Especially, it definitely stings, especially after hearing that Trey Donaldson entered his name into the portal, which I don't know if any of you saw coming, but I definitely did not see that coming, especially with the expectation that Aiden Holloway was going to seek different opportunities for a different team. Um, I feel like it's just going to be a plug and play situation from the guard standpoint. Um, so I really hope Bruce and his coaching staff really know what they're doing when it comes to this. I hope they have a contingency plan in place. I do know, though, that it is going to be a little bit easier with the news from today, um, April 12th, that JP Pegues from Furman announced his commitment to Auburn. And we all know that he was huge at Furman. I think he scored somewhere around 18 and a half points a game. And he was a distributor as well. He averaged almost 5 assists a game, and that was huge. One thing that really stood out to me was his quote on why he chose Auburn. I'm gonna read to you what exactly he told On Three. He says, "I chose Auburn because of their conviction and the vivid vision they had for me. I also love how they operate in a family-oriented environment, which was a big priority for me. Lastly, Auburn is a winning program and one of the best defenses in the country." And this is coming from a guy that had nothing to do with Auburn, never played Auburn. He could only watch them on TV. And so this guy is a big time get for Auburn, for Bruce Pearl, and a big time get for Auburn in general because we know what he can do on the court. I've watched a lot of highlight film on him. He knows how to create his own shot. He knows how to create shots for his teammates, and he's just a very consistent player that knows how to play defense as well. He's kind of long. I don't have his measurables right in front of me, but it's just one of those guys, man. I just he's going to be a guy that we can really count on when it comes to scoring the ball and creating opportunities for our guys, especially since another big piece of news: Dylan Cardwell announced his return to Auburn, which is he was the energy for our team, bro. It's just gonna be it's gonna be a fun time in 2024 2025 season. We got a lot of guys coming back. Obviously we know that Chad Baker Mazara announced his return. Dylan Cardwell's now announced his return. We're waiting on one more guy to make his decision. And there's a lot of things I'm hearing, a lot of things that I'm seeing that point to Janai Broom announcing that he's coming back. Um, at this point, I'm like probably 60-40 split that he's going to come back to Auburn. I know he wanted to leave on a high note. And if he leaves now, he's definitely going to be leaving on a low note with that round of 64 exit in March Madness. Um, if Janai Broom does decide to come back, we have a lot of other returning guys that would probably this would probably make this Bruce Pearl's most polished basketball team. I don't know if they'd be the best basketball team, but they'd be the most polished, most game day, game time polished team that Auburn would have ever put on the court. With Denver Jones coming back, Chad Baker Mazara, Dylan Cardwell, and all the other players that came off the bench. We did have KD Johnson, Trey Johnson, Aiden Holloway leave with Jalen Williams, all obviously running out of eligibility and going to try his luck in the draft. But I don't think there's a whole lot to be concerned about, especially with the guys we have coming in, most notably Tahad Pettiford, the point guard out of high school, 5-star guy. He's been committed to Auburn for a very long time and just he's been signed for a long time. And I know he's just ready to get in and do work. So a lot of things to look forward to. Um, Now, when it comes to what we're going to do at the point guard position with JP McGeese coming in, I feel like we're going to see a lot of JP McGeese at the one and Denver Jones at the two, and then Denver Jones at the one with Chad Baker Mazara coming in at the two, with the other guys coming in to fill the three position. Um, so I feel like there are options for Auburn to go with at the point guard position, but mostly I would probably expect to see JP McGeese and Tahad Pettiford taking the bulk of the point guard snaps, unless Auburn needs to get into a defensive mindset and they put Denver Jones in the at the one and just put defensive minded guys that can still score the ball on the court to either slow a team down or catch back up. So I mean, I know a lot of people wanted the Miles Rice from Washington State. He was a young guy, redshirt freshman. But with us taking JP Begees, I feel like the Miles Rice is just out the window and isn't going to happen. Dylan Cardwell coming back is obviously going to be huge for us. It's going to do a lot of good for us, and Auburn's going to win a lot of games in 2024 and 2025 season. So I don't think anyone should be hitting the panic button right now. They should be getting behind the coaching staff, behind the players coming back, behind the players that are coming in. Um, just it's gonna be a good time. But with that, that is my last topic of the night. I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. As always, like our videos, share our videos, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, get that ding to notify you whenever we upload new content. Follow us on X at War Eagle Weekly. Follow us on TikTok, War Eagle Weekly. And we just appreciate everything you guys do, all the interactions we have on TikTok, X, and YouTube. And yeah, this has been War Eagle Weekly, and this is Josh signing off. War Eagle, guys.